All right, we are live. Welcome everybody to the Gunner Technology Livestream, a weekly tech talk for non-techies and techies alike. I'm your host, Jerry Merkins. With me is CEO of Gunner Technology, Cody Swan. What's going on, CEO of Gunner Technology?
Not much. Just another day. I know I don't sound
Another day,
great,
another dollar.
Another day, another dollar. I don't sound great, but I feel great. So I'm gonna try to avoid coughing on air this time because I know we lost like 1.5 viewers last week from my coughing fits.
Yeah, like hypochondriacs felt ill watching our live stream last week.
Yeah, exactly.
You're rocking the Pittsburgh Pirates hat I see today.
Yeah. No. Wait. What am I wearing?
It looks like a Pirates color scheme.
Oh, it's actually dark green and yellow. It's like John Deere.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay. Packers.
Yeah.
It's almost Packers colors.
Yeah, very similar to the Packers. There you go.
Oh yeah. The green's coming through. All right. Well, let's go ahead and dive into it. We were talking about the Simpsons before this and how long it's been going on. The 30th anniversary this year for anyone out there who didn't know.
Yeah.
But we can dive right into the winner of our Country Store giveaway is Francisco P from Buffalo, New York. So Francisco, you have Country Store hat heading your way along with copies of our ebooks. And for anyone who didn't win the Country Store giveaway, by the way, Country Store is a lifestyle brand. For anyone who loves the outdoors, you can visit them at countrystoreoutfitters.com. Hop on our Facebook page and sign up for that. And while you're on our Facebook page, go ahead and answer our question of the week, which this past week was it the 5G question or was that the week before?
I think that was the week before.
Okay. All right. Totally going to think of it. I can talk about the question of the week this week, by the way, which I just made. So the question of the week this week is Jeff Bezos then or Jeff Bezos now? And it's got two comical pictures of Jeff Bezos, one from what must have been like the late 90s, early 2000s, where he looks like a total dork and he's just surrounded by books and he's wearing like a ridiculous button-up shirt. And then Jeff Bezos now is him with like crazy sunglasses and like a leather vest and shaved head, and he's super hardcore looking.
Oh yeah. Although it's weird because that's a certain picture. I'm looking at a current picture of him now, and he does sort of still look like that vulture from the Bugs Bunny cartoons.
That's a
Remember
great
who
call.
I'm talking about?
Yeah, of course.
Like, by the way, he's in the news. Is that why you use him as the
That's exactly why. And actually, the question last week was, are you excited for 5G? And overwhelmingly, people are very meh about 5G, which I don't blame people for, because I mean, I think as it gets closer to actually rolling out, people might get a little more hyped about it. And especially when stuff gets built for 5G, the power of 5G might truly shine through. But right now, I don't think people are that hyped up about it.
Can we talk about 5G for
so.
a second? Because I'm pumped about it, because like there are certain things, and I know we talked about this on a past episode, that become possible with 5G that just aren't possible right now. So for example, like you could be wearing a nanotechnology vest, and the latency and speed of 5G is so quick, it could detect that you're in a car accident and deploy like a Kevlar suit around you, almost like Iron Man.
Yeah.
And by the time you you receive impact, the suit would be fully formed and you would be like completely okay.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's
kind of crazy remote, how fast it is.
Yeah, it's the remote stuff that really shows the true power of 5G. We talked about self-driving trucks a little while back, and how people are going to be able to just be truckers from their basement instead of actually being on the road.
Right. So then you have like a world where like the World of Warcraft folks are pretty much running the real world infrastructure and jobs, which is just kind of terrifying. But
yeah, it's like Second Life. The game will actually just be Life, the game.
Right.
Like people will just survive out of their basements, like those folks in Japan who never leave their apartments.
Hikikomori?
Yeah, that's
it. Yeah, okay. Is Second Life still a thing? Did they shut that down? Still a thing?
I thought it was a huge thing. People already make their living on Second Life. Like I watched a documentary about it, and there was someone who was like a fashion designer. So they make fake clothes for fake virtual characters, and they make like $100,000 a year.
Wow.
And designing stuff. So,
and I'm a bad person to explain this, but just so everyone knows, Second Life is like a open, no restrictions virtual world where you literally live the life of a virtual character and you get a job. And it's just like, again, it's like a second life.
I think they referenced it on The Office, and Dwight plays himself in Second Life. He just, except he has the power of flight. That's the only thing that's different.
That's right. That's right. So that is great. But yeah, oh yeah, but Bezos, I thought it was interesting because he still gets paid 82. Wait, no. What was the $81,840 a year, which is what he's been paid for the last 10 years. Which on the face of it, you kind of see as an insult because a lot of CEOs take $1 salary, but then they have all these stock bonuses and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
Bezos doesn't have stock bonuses, so I'm not sure how he has so much wealth. It doesn't really add up to me.
Is it from selling old stock?
That's a good point. Yes. Okay. Because at one point
he could have made like billions off of just selling old stock.
Selling old stock, because he was obviously 100% owner in
Amazon.
I
I think he's only 12% now, right?
Yeah, like 12 or 17%. Yeah, that's right. So definitely that's a good call. He probably does not make much money anymore, but he probably sold a bunch of stock. And
I saw he was actually in the news. The news I saw was there was two things. One, he's launching low orbit satellites to provide internet to, I guess, parts of the world that have absolutely no internet, which seems
like my house sometimes.
Yeah, you should just put a satellite right over your house. It seems virtuous, but it's also at the same time Amazon's gonna get another couple billion customers. So, I mean, there's it works out for Amazon too.
Here's an interesting question. Maybe this is the question of the week for like the following. What do you think people who don't have internet, what do you think their first purchase will be from Amazon? Like, I mean,
these are the limits of Facebook's poll. What would the two options be?
Like a rain stick? Is that what people are going to order? A rain stick?
Probably something like that.
I don't know what people would order that are in that remote of an area, like one of those leaf skirts, maybe. Is that what they're going to order?
Yeah. They might try and just buy rain. They might not understand how Amazon works.
And I'm sure you can buy rain on Amazon.
Yeah, I'm sure you can. The other thing I saw was that I guess he's investing. I forget what the name of the company is, but he has his own rocket company. I guess everyone in Silicon Valley has their own rocket company now.
Yeah.
But I guess he's investing $1 billion into that each year, and his whole thing is the Earth is going to be catastrophically overcrowded sooner rather than later. He's saying like we're going to get to like 1 trillion people or something, and so he wants to build rockets so that we can just go. I don't know if it's live in space or populate other regions of space, or
ship the excess population into deep space.
Or just aim the rockets right at the excess population and solve the problem right there. I'm not sure what his plan is, but that's the other thing I saw. And I just think it's funny that rockets are like the new big thing for all these tech gurus to have.
I will say, don't bet against Jeff Bezos. That's kind of like a mantra of mine. Don't bet against Jeff Bezos.
He's a smart man. He knows what he's doing. And speaking of knowing what you're doing, we can dive into today's topic, which is actually sort of like an amalgamation of 3 topics because they're sort of all related. It's not really worth it to talk about one without talking about the other. So the name of this episode, however, is Pulling Down the Template, which I didn't want to change because it's such an awesome title because it's so mysterious. But maybe talk about
it's like ordering rain from Amazon.
Yeah, that's right. But I guess talk about what the template is first.
Sure. So the template it's actually 3 templates in one. It's 3 templates, one being a template, like a starter template for a serverless backend, another template for a React web front end, and then a third template for a React native front end. So that's kind of what it is. It's like a starter pack, if you will.
And what are the steps required? Obviously, there's an associated video with this, and it's kind of a long one. It's like 42 minutes long, but it goes into depth more so than we'll be able to go into here, and you can actually see it working. But what kind of stuff are you configuring with each of those templates?
Yeah, so basically, it literally is a those 3 templates are projects. And you pull down the template right now. You pull down the template by doing a git clone, and so you're using that git technology that we talked about in the first episode of this series, and you're using that to suck down the template. Once the template is on your local machine, you're basically just doing a number of search and replaces for tagged items, like tag project name, and you're going to actually replace project name with the actual name of the project. And looking ahead, we have at the end of this series, we have some future improvements, and we can use a technology called like Yeoman, which is like a template formatter. So you can be like Yeoman build my new project, and it'll pull down the 3 templates and automatically do the find and replace stuff that we have to manually do right now.
And so what are the benefits of doing it that way as opposed to, spinning all this stuff up from scratch?
So standardization, standardization is a big one. Best practice is another. Like we figured out like the best way to do certain things.
Yeah, these are a lot of hard-earned lessons in these templates.
Yeah, exactly. So best practices and standardization. Standardization is huge. Like if you have everyone in the company starting from this template, then it's a lot easier for someone else on the team to jump in and kind of contribute a lot faster, which is of utmost importance.
Because it's not just configuration stuff; it's actually project structure too. So it everything is sort of in its right place.
Yeah, exactly. So X goes here, Y goes there. So if someone else jumps on the project, they know where these things live within the project structure.
And what's the environment going to be like once you get this template up and running? What sort of what sort of access to the site and what sort of tools are going to be set up as you work through this template?
So basically, when it's all set up and you kick it off on your local machine, you'll have the ability to register for an account, sign into an account, change your password, confirm your password, and there's basically there's 3 screens. There's the account screens, which is kind of one screen. So sign in, register, forgot password, confirm password. I consider those all one screen, but those are 4 different versions of the same screen. You have the privacy policy page, which every place requires a privacy policy. So we generate a privacy policy for the project. And then you have a splash screen, which is what you see if you're not logged in. And then a home screen, which is what you see if you are logged in.
Cool. And what is this actually running on? What's the stack that this template produces? I know we've
Yes.
talked about it in other episodes, but just in case someone's tuning in for the first time today.
Right. So the React web client is originally created from what's called Create React App, which is just a standardization of using React in projects. The React Native client is generated from using Expo Create App. So those are the starting points that both of these occurred from. And then the back end is based off of, and I can't remember the command offhand, but it's based off of the serverless framework Create. So serverless framework has a command to just set up a new project, and that's what that's based off of. And then also at the same time, we use Amplify, which is an AWS product, and instead of actually running the Amplify commands, the template already includes those Amplify commands that have been run and copied into the serverless project to get started from there.
And so you will actually have access to all these tools either through console or through the web UI for, say, Amplify.
Yeah, exactly. And so, yeah, exactly. So you can use Amplify once it's installed. So Amplify has added a number of features since we've developed this template. And again, under future improvements, we have add the new Amplify integrations. But you're right, you actually do have Amplify installed there, so you can use the Amplify tool chain kind of thing.
What are some of those integrations coming down the pipeline?
So one of the things that's really cool about Amplify is their new code gen feature. And if you watch not this episode, but the one that I'm working on right now, you'll see it's going to come into big handy. So code gen is basically like you scaffold a certain type of code. So like, let's say you have like an object, you want to like store different vehicles in your database. You can just basically tell Amplify what data fields you need, like number of tires, type of vehicle, and it generates a whole bunch of code to wire up your specification to the application itself. So CodeGen is a really big one for Amplify. The other one is, and this is one of the reasons we kind of ripped out some of the Amplify generated code, is Amplify didn't have the ability. It would create what are called user pools, which are used for signing in and creating accounts. And using Amplify, it would force you to use the pattern of having a username and password. But most of our clients want an email and password kind of thing. So the user pools through AWS Cognito can do that, but not with the Amplify integration. So that's one of the reasons we ripped it out. Now Amplify allows you to specify when you create the user pool what attribute, username, or email address you want to use for authorization.
That's huge. I know you talked through some other tools in the video too, like Sentry. What other stuff does comes included with this template?
Oh yeah, so Sentry's a good one. So Sentry, basically, it's it's a remote watcher kind of thing. So if there's any errors in your application that are happen in production, Sentry will capture it. It'll store it in your Sentry dashboard, but it'll also email you and say, hey, there was a JavaScript error that occurred. Here's where it was. Here's where in the code it was, and here's how often it's been occurring, kind of thing. So that's a big one that comes with it. The other one that is integrated by default, but not always uses, something called Branch. So Branch is big for linking. So without getting too technical, one of the tricky things about doing our native app is linking to a specific screen inside the native app. And also, if you have a iOS version and an Android version, and you're sending someone a link, you're saying, hey, check out this app. How do you know what the person has? Maybe they have an iPhone, maybe they have an Android. How do you know which link to send them? Branch takes care of that. You send them one Branch link, and when the person clicks it, Branch figures out if they're on an iPhone or an Android and directs them to the appropriate app download page. Or if they have it already installed, it just opens the application. So it takes care of a lot of stuff that you would have to really hack together on your own.
Yeah, it's huge. So we talked about serverless, React Native. Let's talk about the environments for a second. What environments is this template going to produce?
So we're going to have three environments, and really, we're going to have three environments right off the gate with the ability to add a number of other ones, and I'll explain that in a second. So right off the bat, we have a development environment, we have the staging environment, we have the production environment. And so what we have right off bat is a one developer setup. So basically, the development environment is tied to my Git branch, so Cody's Git branch. So when I deploy, my branch goes to a specific area in the development environment. Now, the cool thing about this setup is if you have multiple teams and you want each person to have their own branch, you can have each developer have their own development environment tied to their branch, kind of thing. And we'll get more into kind of why you would want to do this in the next episode, which comes down to deployment. But so you could basically have any number of development environments just by creating more Git branches. And then you have the staging environment, which is basically where you're going to do quality assurance, and you're going to do product demonstrations for the client or the stakeholders. And then production is where your end users or your consumers are going to be actually using the product live.
And talk about the local development environment, because I know there's certain tools that you're going to be using to test out React Native applications.
Yeah. So, and here's another choice we made. When we say we talked about one of the weaknesses of this setup, and it sort of is a weakness, but it's not really that big of a deal. So the serverless backend runs remotely. Like we're so hooked into AWS's infrastructure. There's no way we could clone all of their infrastructure and put it on our local machine and run everything quote unquote locally. When we say run it local, what that means is that everything needed to run the application is on your machine. Well, it's literally impossible to get everything you would need to run the application locally on your machine. You can get most of it. The problem is so many of the things we need, like you can't really clone Cognito and put it on your local machine. So there are tools that you can mimic on local to run your local machine. But we've made the decision that basically we're going to use the AWS infrastructure that is there. We're not going to try to copy it down to our machine. So you do have to be actually connected to the internet. So when we say run locally, your front ends are running on your machine. Your machine is actually running the front ends. But the back end, it's speaking to a development branch or a development environment up in AWS's cloud.
And talk about those environments too, because I think we touched on that in another episode, but we're actually creating different environments for development, staging, and production on AWS itself as well.
Right. So not only do we have separate environments, but each environment, okay, the development environments, the one or more development environments run in an AWS account. The staging environment runs in a different AWS account, and the production environment runs in yet another AWS account. And this is basically so two things. Like let's say you have like contractors, right? Let's say you have contractors who are working and you want to give them a development branch. So they can work on development and they can push to development. They can see their changes and work on the product, but they can't like push changes to staging. They can't actually have access to staging or, God forbid, production.
Right.
And so you can tie up security ends with that as well, and you can also prevent accidental access as well. So this is a big thing for HIPAA. So like if you're using a development environment, it doesn't need to be HIPAA compliant if you're not using real patient data. But if your production environment does have to be HIPAA compliant, and if somehow your development environment has access to the production environment, you're no longer HIPAA compliant. So it's a big thing to prevent accidental access across environments, kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, it handles all those major security concerns. Great. I guess we sort of got off track there about the React Native tools that you're going to be using locally too.
Yeah, exactly. So that's very simple. There's a number of basically the when you use Expo with React Native, it takes care of spinning up an emulator for you. So you can either actually it runs the engine, the Node engine, to power the React app on your local machine. And so then using Expo, you can launch either a simulator, an iPhone simulator, or an Android simulator, and integrate or interact with the app that way. Or you can take your actual phone, and if you're on the same Wi-Fi network at home or at the office or wherever, you can scan a QR code, and Expo will actually install the app on your phone, and you can actually test it that way as well. Similarly, with the web front end, it creates a simple web server that runs on your machine and responds to requests through the web browser. So you would basically, like, let's say, you're accessing gunnertech.com. You would type in your web browser, gunnertech.com. Well, in this case, you type in like localhost :3000. And that web request doesn't actually go out to the internet. It just goes to your local machine, which is running the server, which takes care of rendering this front end kind of thing.
But there are actually staging and production sites that you can hit remotely as well. Yeah.
Right. Exactly. And in fact, development environments as well. You can actually, if you don't want to test it locally, you can actually, it'll be a convoluted URL, but you can actually type in a remote URL and then see any environment you want remotely running in a web browser as well.
Trying to think of anything we've missed, but I think that basically covers the gist of the video. I mean, you'll be able to see going through the video yourself. You start by pulling down this template, and 42 minutes later, you have all these different environments and accounts and a local instance running. Expo's all set up. So, I mean, it's really cool how much you can do in that short of period of time.
Yeah, I would say, because I was figuring, I've never tried to do that and talk at the same time. So I had made some mistakes while I was doing it.
Yeah,
So
yeah, it isn't even 42 minutes, huh? There's
I,
that
I would,
thing, removing the spaces, and then there was one other thing I
right.
forget.
I would say that within 30 minutes, you can have a like professional, world-class environment set up and running for your development. I would say 30 minutes it would be what it would take.
And it's nuts too because it's infinitely scalable. It'll handle any sort of load. It's cheap. It's dirt cheap too. I mean, what are the reasons not to go with this stack at this point?
There's really not. The only reason that I can think of is if you're already running, if it's not a new project. If you're
Mhm.
like if you're adding something to an existing product or anything like that, this isn't going to work. Like other than that, it's people who don't understand serverless, and that's unfortunate because it's hard to explain it. It seems a bit too magical to people, and again, it really does make a lot of people's jobs obsolete in a lot of ways. So you do
Mhm.
get like pushback and say, people come up with reasons why not to do it, which are usually contrived and certainly hyperbole. Um, but if you're starting a new project, there's no reason not to use a serverless backend. Now, again, if you're this is for like we're talking about web apps and mobile apps. If you're using something like IoT, for example, where you're going to be doing a ton of like processing of big data, you may not, but even then, I would still say serverless is the way to go because now serverless introduced WebSockets. So really, it's the next evolution in infrastructure and hosting. We had monolithic architectures, which were basically where you provision servers and added more servers when you needed to. And then we had containers, which containers are kind of basically you can put a whole bunch of different services in one container and then replicate those containers very rapidly.
Mhm.
And then after that, the next evolution is basically serverless, where you just don't have any of that stuff and everything just kind of happens.
I mean, it is going to be tough when you think about those legacy jobs that manage those monolithic server farms, where basically these large companies have, you know, thousands of servers that are basically there to handle the once in a blue moon traffic spike. Otherwise, they're just sort of sitting there. So, I mean, it's interesting to think about the future for those folks.
Yeah, I mean, it really is because, like, if you're sitting at a company and you're like the IT guy who kind of watches the servers, the on-premise servers, you really should start retraining yourself because for now, companies outlaid a lot of money for those servers. They're not going anywhere. But when those servers reach end of life, I guarantee you they're not buying new servers for on-premise support. They're just not going to do it. So if you're at one of those big companies and you're like, okay, well, I have these servers probably have about 3 years left in their life cycle. That's how long you're going to have a job for. I mean, doing that, you may retrain yourself within that company and become another role inside that company, no problem. But it's time to start learning new skills, kind of thing.
Yeah, and actually, I neglected my duty of following along with the chat, but there's actually a question related exactly to that, which is what's the best way to learn serverless?
So AWS has some amazing resources. They have blogs for Lambda. So the big crux of AWS's serverless offering is called Lambda. So they have a lot of Lambda resources. I actually we follow a lot of serverless people on Twitter, people who talk about serverless technologies. Um, AppSync, the actual Twitter handler AppSync, which is an AWS account, has great stuff. The Twitter account AWS Amplify puts out great stuff. So there's a lot of stuff out there that's really beneficial. And then there's a couple of Manning books, and I know we have a discount code. Maybe we can throw that out there because they have a book called AWS Serverless. I think I'm gonna look it up right now. And I
I
read
might
that
look at
book
the
and it was
code.
really yeah, Serverless Architecture. And then they have another book called they have three books actually, or they have Serverless Architecture on AWS. They have serverless applications with AWS, which is a video. And then they have AWS Lambda in Action, which is another book. Check out those 3 things for sure, because that's where actually I kind of cut my teeth on this serverless stuff, and I haven't looked back, and it's really gone very well for the company and everything. Oh, I should mention, by the way, that we kind of changed gears, and this next video, we're actually going to be coding the application. You're going to see me coding the application. The application is different because we're submitting an app for a government bid in the state of Florida. So we switched it up a little bit to build this app, and we're actually going to start with nothing. We're going to start with nothing, and at the end of this, you'll actually see the completed, total running, finished application.
And for folks who saw the name in the previous video, we're not building an app to price gouge people. It's actually an app to detect price gouging.
Yeah, so it's like in Florida where we have a lot of hurricanes and stuff. After the hurricanes come through, there's a lot of price gouging. So there's a way to for people to report price gouging and get feedback on price gouging and kind of recognize what price gouging is and stuff like that.
Any last words on this pulling down the template episode?
Make it rain, Amazon. Make it rain.
Yeah, and I would say we'll include the link to the template in the description below. But for anyone out there who's interested in this kind of stuff, just pull it down and mess around with it. There's really, you're not going to accidentally spend thousands of dollars on AWS.
Right.
There's really no risk to it. So it's fun to just get in there and mess around with too, just to see what's possible.
Yeah. Actually, everything involved in the template getting set up is what's called free tier eligible. So you won't spend a dime for 6 months, and then you won't spend a dime after that unless people are actually using the application you built.
Yeah, so definitely dive in there and check it out. But that's going to do it for this week's episode. Make sure to tune in next Thursday at 1 p.m. Eastern time for the next episode of the Gunner Technology Livestream. Hop on our Facebook page and enter the Country Shore giveaway. Country Shore is a lifestyle brand for anyone who loves the outdoors. You can visit them at countryshoreoutfitters.com. And while you're on our Facebook page, answer our question of the week, which is, and I say Bezos. It's Bezos, huh? I
always said Bezos as well. I always said it as well. And then I heard someone from Amazon say Bezos, and I was like, okay, maybe it's Bezos.
And is it? It's officially Bezos?
How do you?
While Cody looks that up, the question of the week is Jeff Bezos then or Jeff Bezos now? And you can see the pictures of old school Jeff Bezos. What's probably like his garage, which is where he started selling books from, and then Jeff Bezos now looking all hardcore and like the vulture from the Bugs Bunny cartoons, like Cody said. But is it officially Bezos?
Yep. I just heard it directly from his mouth. Bezos.
Okay, so Jeff Bezos. I will never say Bezos again. I'll probably say Bezos again. But anyways, hop on our Facebook page and answer that question of the week. You can check out the blog post for this episode at gunnertech.com. The podcast will be available on iTunes. Our ebooks are available on Amazon, speaking of Jeff Bezos, Barnes & Noble, iBooks, Kobo, and anywhere else ebooks are sold. Make sure to tune in next Thursday at 1 p.m. Eastern time for the next episode of the Gunner Technology Livestream. That's going to do it for this week's episode. I'm Derry. That's Cody. We'll see you next week.